What's wrong, old-timer? Those 10's too heavy for you. The laughter echoed off the concrete walls of the Camp Lejeune Fitness Center like artillery fire. Stan Wojcik kept his eyes on the mirror, kept his breathing steady, kept lifting. 10 pounds, up, down, up, down. The young men behind him didn't understand that some battles aren't fought with muscle. If you believe that true strength has nothing to do with size, type respect in the comments before we continue. The base gym at 0600 was usually quiet. Serious lifters, serious work, no music, no conversation, just iron and sweat and the kind of silence that meant business. Stan had chosen this hour deliberately for the past 6 months, ever since he'd moved to Jacksonville to be closer to his granddaughter. At 73 years old, with arms that looked like they might snap under anything heavier than a grocery bag, he knew he made an unusual sight among the muscled young warriors who populated the weight floor. His doctor had prescribed resistance training for bone density, light weights, high repetitions, nothing heroic. Stan didn't argue. He'd stopped arguing about most things decades ago. He simply showed up, did his work, and left without bothering anyone. But this morning was different. A group of 4 Marines from the Special Operations Training Battalion had claimed the free weight section with the territorial aggression of men who believed the gym belonged to them by divine right. Corporal Eric Brunner was the largest of them. 6'4", 240 pounds, a chest like a barrel and arms that could curl what Stan weighed. He'd been watching the old man with growing amusement for the past 15 minutes, nudging his buddies, making comments just loud enough to carry. Stan heard every word, the shuffling, the waddle observations, the jokes about nursing homes and assisted living. He'd heard worse. In places these young men couldn't imagine, in languages they'd never learn. But he kept lifting. 10 pounds, up, down. Hey! Brunner's shadow fell across Stan like an eclipse. Hey, Grandpa, you know there's a senior center on Lejeune Boulevard, right? They got chair yoga. Might be more your speed. Stan lowered the dumbbells carefully, placing them in their rack with the precise movements of a man who respected equipment. He turned to face Brunner. Up close, the size difference was almost comical. Stan stood 5'6", maybe 140 pounds after a big breakfast. His white t-shirt hung loose on a frame that seemed held together by memory and stubbornness. "Thank you for your concern," Stan said quietly. His voice carried a faint accent, softened by 50 years in America, but never quite erased. Polish, or maybe Czech. Brunner couldn't tell and didn't care. "I am fine with these weights." "Fine?" Brunner laughed, looking back at his friends for approval. "Brother, you're not fine. You're one sneeze away from the emergency room." "What are you, even doing on a military base?" "I have privileges," Stan said simply. "My wife, she was career Navy, 30 years. Was? She passed 4 years ago." For a moment, something flickered across Brunner's face, something almost human. Then it was gone, buried under the need to perform for his audience. "Look, I'm sorry about your wife or whatever, but this is a serious gym. We've got guys training for actual combat here. You're kind of in the way." Stan nodded slowly, as if considering this perspective. "I will move to the corner," he offered. "I do not wish to be in anyone's way." He bent to pick up the 10-pound dumbbells, and Brunner's hand shot out, grabbing his wrist. The grip was meant to be intimidating. Brunner had hands that could crush walnuts, but the moment his fingers closed around Stan's wrist, something changed in the old man's posture. Nothing visible, nothing dramatic. Just a subtle shift in weight, a slight rotation of the shoulder, a tension that hadn't been there before. His eyes lifted to meet Brunner's. They were pale blue, those eyes, the color of winter ice over deep water. And for just a moment, Brunner felt something he hadn't felt since his first firefight in Hellman Province. The hair on his arm stood up. "Please remove your hand," Stan said. His voice hadn't changed. Still quiet. Still polite. But something underneath it had shifted, like hearing a safety click off in a dark room. Brunner released him, more confused than afraid. The confusion made him angry. Anger made him stupid. "You know what, old man? You've got some attitude for a guy who looks like a stiff breeze would kill him. How about you and me step into the combatives room? Show me what those little chicken arms can do." His friends whooped. Other gym-goers stopped their workouts, sensing the spectacle about to unfold. Stan shook his head slowly. "I do not fight," he said. "Not anymore." "Oh, you don't fight?" Brunner stepped closer, using his size to intimidate. "What's the matter? Scared?" "No." Stan's voice remained calm. "I'm not scared. I'm old. I'm tired, and I do not wish to hurt you." The laughter that erupted was genuine. Brunner doubled over, slapping his thigh. His friends howled. Even some of the other Marines in the gym cracked smiles. The idea of this fragile grandfather hurting Eric Brunner was the funniest thing they'd heard all week. "Hurt me?" Brunner wiped tears from his eyes. "Grandpa, I've fought in 3 countries. I've got 2 bronze stars. I train combatives 6 days a week. You couldn't hurt me if I stood still and let you try." Stan sighed. The sigh of a man who had seen this exact situation unfold 100 times and knew exactly how it would end. "Please," he said, "let me finish my exercises. I will leave soon." Brunner should have let it go. Any reasonable person would have let it go. But reason had left the building the moment his ego felt threatened by an old man's quiet refusal to be intimidated. He reached out and shoved Stan's shoulder. Not hard enough to knock him down, just hard enough to assert dominance, just hard enough to cross a line. What happened next would be discussed in that gym for years afterward. The accounts would vary. Some swore Stan moved so fast he blurred. Others insisted Brunner simply fell on his own. The security camera footage, reviewed later by increasingly bewildered officials, showed something that didn't seem physically possible. Stan's left hand came up, not in a fist, not in a strike, but with 2 fingers extended. They touched Brunner's neck, just below the ear, in a spot that most people didn't know existed. The touch was gentle, almost tender, like a father checking a child's temperature. Brunner's eyes rolled back. His knees buckled. 240 pounds of Special Operations Marine collapsed to the rubber floor like a puppet with cut strings. He wasn't unconscious. His eyes were open. He was breathing, but he couldn't move. His arms lay at his sides, twitching occasionally, completely unresponsive to his brain's desperate commands. Stan stepped back, his hands returning to his sides. His expression hadn't changed. His breathing hadn't changed. He looked down at Brunner with something that might have been pity. "Temporary," he said quietly. "You will recover in 2 minutes, perhaps 3. Do not try to stand too quickly. You will fall." The gym had gone silent. Brunner's friends stood frozen, their brains struggling to process what they'd witnessed. Other Marines had stopped mid-rep, weights suspended in the air, mouths hanging open. Nobody moved towards Stan. Nobody moved at all. The door to the gym swung open. Master Gunnery Sergeant Victor Okonkwo walked in. 45 years old, built like a tank, the Marine Corps Martial Arts Program senior instructor for the entire East Coast. He'd trained thousands of Marines. He'd fought in more countries than most people could name. He'd earned his black belt 6th degree through decades of blood and dedication. He took one look at Brunner on the floor, one look at Stan standing over him, and stopped dead in his tracks. His face went through a transformation that the watching Marines would never forget. Confusion, recognition, shock, and then something none of them had ever seen on Master Guns Okonkwo's face before. Awe. He walked toward Stan, slowly, deliberately, his combat boots barely making a sound on the rubber floor. 3 feet away, he stopped. And then Master Gunnery Sergeant Victor Okonkwo, the most dangerous unarmed man most of these Marines had ever met, placed his feet together, straightened his spine, and bowed. Not a casual nod. Not a respectful inclination of the head. A full, formal bow from the waist, eyes lowered, held for 3 long seconds. When he rose, his voice carried across the silent gym. "Grandmaster Wojcik, I did not know you were stationed here." The word hit the room like a thunderclap. Grandmaster. Stan inclined his head slightly, acknowledging the bow with a minimal gesture of someone who had received such honors so many times they no longer required response. "I am not stationed," he said. "I am retired. I live nearby. I only wish to exercise." Okonkwo turned to face the stunned Marines, his voice taking on the tone of a man delivering a history lesson that might save their lives. "Stanislaw Wojcik, Israeli Defense Forces, 1969 to 1981. Original Krav Maga cadre under Imi Lichtenfeld himself. Consultant to 16 military special operations programs across 12 countries. Author of the manual that my manual is based on. The man who taught my teacher's teacher." Brunner had recovered enough to sit up. He stared at Stan with the expression of a man who had just learned he'd picked a fist fight with a hurricane. "The technique he used on you," Okonkwo continued, "is called the vagal reset. It's not in any manual. It's not taught in any program. There are maybe 5 people alive who know how to do it correctly. 4 of them are in Israel, and 1 of them is standing in this gym, trying to do his physical therapy in peace, while you children decided to mock him for lifting 10-pound weights." He turned back to Stan. "Grandmaster, I apologize on behalf of the Marine Corps, on behalf of these Marines, on behalf of anyone who has ever failed to recognize what they were looking at." Stan waved his hand, a small gesture of dismissal. "They are young. Young men are foolish. I was foolish once." He looked down at Brunner, who had managed to struggle to his knees. "You fight in 3 countries, yes? Bronze stars, yes? Then you know that real combat is not about muscles. It is about seconds. Fractions of seconds. The time it takes to decide who lives and who dies." He reached down and offered Brunner his hand. Thin, fragile-looking, the hand that had dropped him without effort. Brunner hesitated, then took it. Stan pulled him to his feet with surprising strength. "You are young," Stan said again. "You are strong. You will learn, or you will not. But today, you learned something important." He released Brunner's hand and picked up his 10-pound dumbbells from the rack. "I have 12 more repetitions," he announced to no one in particular. "Then I will leave." He began to lift. 10 pounds, up, down, up, down. The same slow, careful movements as before. The same fragile old man in the too large t-shirt. Except now, every eye in the gym saw something different. They saw the way his feet were positioned, perfectly balanced, ready to move in any direction. They saw the way his eyes tracked movement in the mirror, never losing awareness of his surroundings. They saw 50 years of combat experience wrapped in a body that looked like it belonged in a nursing home. Master Gunnery Sergeant Okonkwo remained in the gym for the rest of Stan's workout. When the old man finished, Okonkwo walked him to the door, speaking quietly in Hebrew, a language several. Surprised Marines didn't know he spoke. At the entrance, they shook hands. Okonkwo bowed again. Stan nodded and walked out into the morning sun. Brunner found him 3 weeks later, at the same time doing the same exercises. He approached slowly, hands visible, posture humble. "Sir," he said, "Grandmaster, I wanted to apologize, properly, for how I treated you." Stan set down his weights and studied the young Marine's face. Whatever he saw there seemed to satisfy him. "You are forgiven," he said simply. Would you be willing to teach me that technique? Or anything, really. I'll pay whatever you want. Brunner struggled for words. "I've never seen anything like that. I didn't know that was possible." Stan was quiet for a long moment. Then he smiled. the first real smile anyone on that base had ever seen from him. "I do not take money," he said, "but I am here every morning. 6 o'clock. If you want to learn, you come. You listen. You respect. That is payment enough." Bruner came back the next morning and the morning after. Within a month, a dozen Marines were showing up at 6 a.m., gathering around a frail old man with 10-pound dumbbells, learning secrets that no amount of muscle could ever teach.